On the night of May 19th, 1983, a red Nissan Pulsar sped into the parking lot of Mackenzie Willamette Hospital in Oregon. Staff from the inside of the building could hear the desperate blaring of the horn, urging them to rush out of the hospital. What they found was a woman yelling that someone had shot her kids, along with the horrible sight of 3 blood-soaked children with bullet wounds. The mother, Diane Downs, appeared far too calm for a mother who had just lost one of her children and didn't know if the others would pull through. As the truth unraveled, police began to suspect Diane, and not the alleged carjacker she blamed the shooting on. To understand her motive behind this atrocity, we have to take a brief look into Diane's past. She married Steve Downs on November 13, 1973 at age 18. Steve was a boy she had met in high school, and though she didn't love him, she used him to conceive children and escape from her parents' home. It didn't take long for Diane to get pregnant, and the couple gave birth to their first child in 1974, a girl named Christy Ann. She was followed by another girl in 1976 named Cheryl Lynn. Diane was a massive attention seeker and loved the attention that pregnancy and babies gave her. She became pregnant with her 3rd child, but decided not to go through with the pregnancy at 6 weeks. After the abortion, she severely regretted what she had done and wanted to right her wrong by having another child. However, by this point, Steve had gotten a vasectomy, so she sought pregnancy elsewhere. She seduced a friend of hers named Mark Sager, who impregnated her. She gave birth to Stephen Daniel, aka Danny, in 1979. Those who knew of Diane's parenting style did not speak highly of her. Steve recalled that she constantly refused to give her children attention and denied them of everything. Babysitters also noticed this, one recalling a memory in which she caught Cheryl jumping on the bed. When she told Cheryl to stop, the young girl asked the sitter, "Is there a gun here?" The sitter asked why, to which Cheryl responded, "I want to kill me. My mom says I'm bad." Steve divorced Diane in 1980 after conflicts regarding infidelity and their financial situation. Now single, she began working at a post office in Arizona. She was known to bed-hop in and out of the office, but eventually landed on her co-worker, Robert Knickerbocker, a married man. The pair met in late 1981, and the affair lasted a few months. But these few months made a lasting impact on Diane that completely changed the course of her life. She became madly obsessed with Robert, pleading with him to leave his wife for her. Robert refused to be around her when she was with her kids, as he was having an affair with her and felt it was inappropriate. It is speculated that this is the motive behind the massacre of her children. She felt that they got in the way of her love life and began to resent them for it. Robert eventually broke off the relationship, choosing his wife over Diane, prompting her to freak out in ways that Robert had never before seen. Diane delusionally went to Robert's home to try to convince his wife to end their marriage. During this period, Diane became a surrogate and carried a child named Jennifer. She claimed that she felt very stable during this period, as she felt needed by the parents of the child. She gave birth to Jennifer on May 8, 1982. Though she had wanted Robert to join her, she moved to Oregon with her 3 children, where she continued working at a post office. Her friend and co-worker, Heather, was interested in buying a horse, and Diane found an advertisement about a horse for sale. Not having Heather's number, Diane decided to drive out to see her and brought the kids with her after dinner on the evening of May 19, 1983. After a small chat with Heather, Diane and the children began their journey back home. However, Diane decided that she wanted to go sightseeing, despite the sun already having gone down. She took a different route than usual, cutting through the rural Old Mohawk Road. What follows will be told through Diane's version of events. She told law enforcement that she saw a man waving her down on the road. She described him as a white man with a shag wavy haircut and beard stubble. For some reason, she stopped to help him, despite being alone with her children at night. When she exited the car, the man demanded her keys. She refused, and in return, the man pointed his gun into the window of her car and shot her 3 children multiple times, killing 1. She then struggled with him, at which point he shot her in the arm. She pushed him down and jumped back into the car and sped towards the hospital. This is the story Diane would later tell detectives at the hospital. She arrived at Mackenzie Willamette Hospital at 10:48 p.m. in her blood-soaked red Nissan. Hospital staff brought the 3 children inside, finding that only 2 of them had any chance of survival. The middle child, 7-year-old Cheryl, had been sitting in the front seat. She was shot once in the heart and once in the lungs. She was pronounced dead on arrival. Christy, age 8, had been shot twice in the chest, and soon after suffered a stroke that left her unable to speak. Danny, age 3, was shot once in the back, paralyzing him from the waist down. The 2 surviving children were in critical condition and had severe blood loss. They were sent to the ICU, where they were given tracheotomies and revitalized. At this point, Diane, the seemingly innocent mother, exhibited her first sign of abnormal behavior. After she had just lost a child and still didn't know the fate of her other 2, she immediately used the hospital phone. She didn't call her ex-husband, or perhaps her parents, but rather Robert, her former lover who lived across the country. This alone didn't raise any alarms for police, but her bizarre behavior from this point on did. She acted abnormally calm for a woman who had just lost one of her children, as if she wasn't grief-stricken at all. She was even seen occasionally smiling and laughing at the hospital. When hospital staff told her that her other 2 children had survived, she responded as if she were perplexed, surprised that they had lived. There was no crying or hysterics involved. When Diane was allowed to finally see Christy in the ICU, detectives watched as she told the girl, "I love you," through gritted teeth. Detectives also noticed that Christy appeared fearful and that her heart rate went from 104 to 147 when she saw her mother. Diane claimed that she had sped to the hospital. However, witnesses had seen her car driving at 5 to 7 miles per hour, almost as if she were waiting for her children to die. When it came time for police to question her, they began to see several inconsistencies in her story. On the phone with Robert, she told him she suspected her ex-husband may have hired a hitman to commit the shooting. However, in an interview with 2 detectives that was later played in court, Diane told them that there had been 2 men in ski masks who knew her name. Both of these stories would have been nearly impossible, seeing as how the decision to take Old Mohawk Road had been last minute, and they couldn't have possibly been waiting for her there. Not only were her stories wildly unlikely, but the crime scene evidence also pointed against her. There was no blood on the steering wheel, despite Diane's arm having been shot, indicating that she had shot herself, not at the original crime scene, but rather shortly before reaching the hospital. Blood spatter and gunpowder residue indicated that the shooter had likely fired from the driver's seat. .22 caliber bullet casings were found at the scene of the shooting, and the weapon was determined to likely have been a handgun. Diane denied ever having a weapon like this. Yet, when Steve Downs was questioned about Diane, he revealed to police that Diane did indeed own a .22 caliber handgun. Robert Knickerbocker corroborated these claims. As the weapon was unable to ever be found, this could not be used against her. However, it did add suspicion. As police gathered evidence against her, 9 months had passed, and in that 9 months, Diane managed to seduce another man into getting her pregnant. She was finally arrested on February 28, 1984, and was charged with 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of criminal assault. The prosecution's psychiatrist diagnosed her with narcissism, histrionism, and antisocialism. Much of the case's outcome was determined by Christie's testimony. Once she regained the ability to speak, she testified in court against her mother. She told the court that she had watched her mother shoot her 3 kids, and then herself in the arm. Shortly before Diane's sentencing, she gave birth to Amy Elizabeth. However, the child was taken from her by the state of Oregon. She was later renamed to Rebecca Babcock after her adoption. Diane was sentenced to life in prison, as well as an additional 50 years on June 17, 1984. But just 3 years later, Diane managed to escape from Oregon Women's Correctional Center. She climbed 2 18-foot razor wire fences, managing to avoid injury by wearing several layers of clothing. She then hid under a truck and stripped off the extra clothes. As she climbed out from underneath the truck, a prison nurse walking into the facility saw her and reported what she had seen to the staff. Upon roll call, it was discovered that Diane was in fact missing. She managed to elude capture for 10 days, but clues in her cell led police to the location she was staying. They received a search warrant for the address and arrested Diane as well as 4 other men found inside, who were all charged with hindering prosecution. Diane was given an additional 5 years for the escape and relocated to a maximum security prison further from her kids in New Jersey. On a positive note, the lead prosecutor of the case, Fred Hughey, adopted Christy and Danny in 1986. Christy eventually had children of her own and named one of her children after Cheryl, her late younger sister. The case of Diane Downs is one of severe mental illness and delusional behavior, and thankfully she has been consistently denied parole ever since her sentencing.